I previously led this session off with the TED Talk of the blind individual that if you attended the Microsoft session, he's pretty excellent. He's a pretty cool guy that's just giving his perspective on how he uses technology to navigate around. But in lieu of that, I did find another TED presenter that I thought was just excellent. And TED stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. And honestly, they have some of the best public speakers around the nation, and I would argue the world, to talk about these concepts. So I'm going to transition over to her video to start us out. It's going to take a minute, but I hope she gives you a great starting point to answer the why we do this. So let me mute myself and get going. Turn off my lovely video because you don't need me zoomed in looking at my screen. Okay. All right, and if we do have problems with sound, let me know, but I think we're good.
Good on sound, Jason.
Okay, give me a second. So it could have delayed real quick after that break.
You're good on sound?
Oh, I'm good on sound. Okay,
Yep.
okay.
Yep, you're good.
I just said turn on sound. Well,
sorry.
You're good.
In my vision of the future, everything is accessible, including the digital world. Over 1 billion people in the world have disabilities, and a lot of us are online. Gaining access to online information can feel incredible. For me, when the web became available, I could go anywhere. I could study the science and technology, and I could travel all over the world of ideas. In the online world, we have a seemingly infinite amount of information available, but we're still putting barriers in front of some people. We can change that. You're probably familiar of the concept of accessibility from the physical world, the design of products and communications and environments so that they work for people with disabilities. If you picture a building and there's a flight of stairs going up to the entrance, not everyone can get up those stairs. But if you add a ramp, there's an accessible way in. But then if you think of accessibility from the design stage forward, you could design a level, no-step entrance, and everyone could come in the front door. That's universal or inclusive design. I work on accessibility in the digital world, and I want to tell you about some things that can make it easier for everyone to use the web, including people with disabilities, and also things like building accessible virtual worlds. Here are some things that you can do on the web. If you have images or video and you embed descriptions, then everyone can access the information in those images, even if they cannot see well or see at all. If you add captions to audio, everyone can learn what's being said, even if they can't hear well or hear at all. If a website works well with voice recognition, then everyone can interact with that website, even if you can't use your hands. And if you design the navigation menus in a consistent way, then everyone can find their way around the site more easily, including people with intellectual disabilities or people who might have memory impairments, perhaps due to aging. Digital accessibility goes well beyond the web. It includes the design of mobile phones, online games, digital books, telepresence robots, and more. Digital accessibility enables us to capture the creative contributions of everyone, the Stephen Hawkings and the Stevie Wonders, as well as the creative contributions of more ordinary people with disabilities. So how do we build an accessible world? What elements are most important? Awareness is a very important piece of the foundation. A colleague of mine invites all the new hires at the tech firm that he works at to come to the accessibility center that he has. And he surveys them to see who might have already heard about accessibility issues and technologies. As of a few years ago, it wasn't any more than 10% in any group of visitors that would come to the center. We have an awareness problem. There's a history of exclusion of people with disabilities going back centuries, millennia, and it's only gradually starting to change. And some disabilities are not necessarily visible, such as hearing impairments. And so awareness of disabilities is actually much lower than the reality. And many people, including people who design technologies, haven't gotten a lot of exposure to this dimension of human variation. And ironically, we then go and design technologies and environments that are inaccessible and that perpetuate that exclusion. We could be teaching people about the diverse user needs when we prepare people for careers in engineering and design. So awareness is one thing. Rights are another very important element. The United Nations Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities has been ratified by 177 countries. That's an international consensus. And it establishes important rights such as access to education and to civic participation and more, including accessibility of information and communications technologies. And around the world, many governments have laws and regulations that require web accessibility and accessibility of other technologies. But sometimes getting people to implement accessibility feels like the hardest part. So I want to tell you a story back in the physical world for a minute. I ran into a friend a few years after the Americans with Disabilities Act had been passed in 1990. She was a longtime advocate for accessible transportation, and I asked her, enjoying finally having our civil rights? It seemed like a safe question to ask, but she said no. She said she'd been waiting at this bus stop, and a bus came by, but it didn't have a lift on it, so she couldn't get on. And then the second bus came by, and it had a lift, but it was broken. The third bus came by, and the driver said, well, I haven't had any training on how to use it yet. And the fourth bus came by, and the driver said, I'm running behind schedule. I don't have time to run this lift for you. And the fifth bus just zoomed right past her. And so there were some teens who had been watching her for a few hours as she was waiting, and they came over and mugged her. So in the physical world, inaccessibility has consequences. The bus company was aware, and my friend had rights, but something went wrong in the implementation, and accessibility didn't happen. Implementation also matters in the digital world. So a lot of times products get shipped without the accessibility bugs fixed. And sometimes critical new accessibility features get postponed to the next version and the next version and the next version. Blind friends tell me that one of the most frustrating things is they will go all the way through filling out an online form, and they'll go to hit that submit button to confirm, and that button wasn't coded right to work with the screen reading technology that they rely on. And what if that button was at the bottom of an online job application and you really needed that job? Or what if you're deaf in a rural area and you need to talk with a specialist over a telemedicine platform? And what if nobody got around to figuring out how to integrate captions into that telemedicine platform? Implementation matters. Here's the good news. Digital accessibility is getting better. Tech firms are starting to declare accessibility as a public commitment. Some are starting to appoint chief accessibility officers so that accessibility is considered in management decisions. Accessibility bugs are sometimes getting showstopper status, meaning fix the bugs before you ship the product. And accessibility is sometimes being included as part of corporate social responsibility. And inclusive design is increasingly getting recognized as an innovation driver. And we're starting to see some exciting, accessible products and services as a result of all of this. So there's another thing that's changing as well. There's a lot more resources to explain how to make technology accessible. Think of an online shopping site for a moment, and let's say that all the items on sale are only differentiated by the color red. Now, there's a lot of people who have color blindness, and they're not going to be able to tell just from that one distinction which items are on sale. So what our group does is we develop guidelines, and we have an internationally recognized standard called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines that explains how to fix that, as well as many, many other things that are covered in that. And what you can do is you can add a bit of text or some kind of icon to indicate, give a redundant indication of what was indicated in the color. And then people can make their choices and buy what they want to. Another thing that those guidelines do, remember the confirm or the submit problem that I mentioned a few minutes ago? It will tell you how to code that in a way that will work regardless of the assistive technology that a person with disability might be using with your website. And that way, everyone can apply for that job. We have a lot of different introductory materials as well as more technical materials that explain how to make technologies accessible. And another thing that's changed is that there is this large international community, a wonderful community that includes people from industry and the disability community and research and government, building this expanding set of resources that explain how to make technologies accessible. And this is causing a ripple effect through the whole field. One of my favorite things is looking at the possibilities of advanced tools and technologies to make accessibility easier to design and develop, and sometimes to even improve on the accessibility in the physical world. Let me give you a few examples of the possibilities. Some people get a seizure reaction from photographic flash or strobing lights. Now, if you were to combine machine learning, which is a type of artificial intelligence or AI, with video processing, you can analyze the variations, the fluctuations in the brightness, and you can buffer that before it's displayed on a computer screen or a wearable headset, thus reducing the seizure risk. For people with color blindness, or more properly, atypical color perception, you can analyze the colors in a video stream and you can shift them to colors that are more readily perceived by an individual. And some people on the autism spectrum have difficulty recognizing emotions in people's facial expressions. And so you can use machine learning to analyze those emotions and to tag the video stream. Once you start thinking in terms of accessibility, you may see opportunities everywhere. Think of automatic speech recognition. The quality of that, the accuracy of recognition has improved immensely. We're using it on our mobile phones and our digital assistants. It's not quite at a level of accuracy yet that works for fully reliable captions. But one of the things that's still quite difficult in speech recognition is recognizing the speech of some people who are deaf and the speech of some people with speech disabilities. And artificial intelligence can also help us there because it's better at recognizing some of the subtle patterns. And so that will eventually enable us to more equitably transcribe, and caption the speech of people with different types of speech. A colleague, though, has noticed that there's some interesting issues that come up with artificial intelligence and disabilities. You've probably heard of AI bias around, for instance, racial and gender characteristics. Well, similar things can happen with disabilities. And she was looking at speech recognition and noticed that particularly the speech of people with speech disabilities, and she noticed that the accuracy of recognition was declining when the size of the reference data set was expanding, because the recognition was weighted more strongly towards the average pronunciations. And then she started looking at autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars, and she was testing how well these were trained against different simulated obstacles that might be crossing the street in front of a car. And she took video of people with certain kinds of wheelchair users. And she found that the simulated cars were hitting the simulated wheelchair users. And so she experimented with different transformations of this reference data set. And she found she had to do very radical transformations to the data set, not just amplifying the outliers, the less frequent data samples, but actually taking out the entire central core of the database before she could successfully train these vehicles not to hit the simulated wheelchair users. So advanced technologies can help us design accessible environments if we use them mindfully. And back to that thing I mentioned earlier about creating accessible virtual worlds, think of all the different senses and information across all the different functional capabilities with different kinds of disabilities that you might be able to take advantage of. For instance, haptic output that includes vibrational effects, and that includes a gravity well, that kind of pulling sensation you can get in space. There's always different kind of modalities you can rely on to help make technologies accessible, and in doing so, to make environments that work better for everyone. So when I talk about digital accessibility, a lot of times people feel like there's nothing that they can do. I want to challenge that. Sometimes it's a simple matter of looking at a situation and thinking, have people thought about accessibility? Have people considered that? And asking questions. For instance, the school website. There's probably parents who have disabilities and want to be able to catch up with the school events. And if your town has online emergency preparedness training materials and an emergency notification system, that's life or death information. How about we all make sure that that's accessible? In the physical world, there's still ongoing work to make everything accessible. It takes many hands. Given the pace, the accelerating pace of technology change, we need even more hands at the table on accessibility. So that means that all of the tech courses, all of the science labs, the maker spaces where you can fabricate 3D objects, all need to be accessible. And in making those accessible, we'll probably come up with some interesting new innovations as well. So if you're a mobile app developer, you can build accessible apps. Anywhere you work in the tech or science field, there's a role that you have where you can help. If you're a quality assurance tester, you can get the tools and the training to test for accessibility. If you're a developer with a disability in a country with no accessibility businesses yet, you can be the first one to open a business. If you're a manager, you can prioritize inclusive design as an innovation driver, but you can also ensure a reliable baseline of accessibility of all your products and services. If you're a recruiter, you can pursue inclusive hiring including at the management and board levels, so that accessibility is considered among other aspects of diversity in improving everything you do. And if you speak multiple languages, you can help us get the word out around the world. I want to welcome you to join us in building an accessible digital future, and particularly in asking questions when you notice places where others might not have thought of accessibility. Thank you.
I just love what she has to say. I mean, there's so many things that we've already talked about in our session about, some of these content standards, making websites accessible, inclusion for all, but she kind of expands on that in ways I really honestly couldn't begin to. So I do love that video. So with what we're talking about this afternoon, it's really about the web and how people access the web. So as we start this, there's a video as well that I'd like to show. It's a little goofy, and that's okay. It was developed by Microsoft and their inclusion team to help explain how, say, someone who is blind or uses a keyboard to navigate uses the web. And I'm going to pull that up. I'll close this one out. And it took me forever to actually find this video. It's like a diamond in the rough. But I think more so than anything I found on the web, this really helps people understand this is what it's like for someone to access a website that's inaccessible. And it's also how someone can use a website effectively that has been made accessible. So let's take a look.
Room.
Hope has spent all day preparing a surprise party for her son's birthday.
Oh no, I forgot the cake. I'd better get online and find a bakery fast.
Hope rushes to her PC to search for a solution.
Bing search engine responds.
I found a site that can help you out.
The Bingo Bakery website appears. Hope spawns at the top of the page. The Bing logo as a character with googly eyes descends.
Here we are. Nice site, isn't it?
I guess, but I can't really tell. I have trouble seeing well, and it looks like this site has very limited accessibility.
Really? Let me take a look with the lights out.
A pull cord swings down. Bing pulls it to turn out the lights.
Bingo Bakery, homepage.
There's nothing to land on!
Hope falls and loses a life.
Oh, I see what you mean. Let me see what the developers can do about this.
A pop-up menu appears. The difficulty level changes from impossible to challenging. Hope spawns again at the top of the page. Bing descends.
Sorry about that. Here, take this developer power-up.
A pop-up menu with an image of shoes and the code for tabbing appears.
These shoes of tabbing will allow you to move from tab to tab on the page. Good luck, and make haste.
Bing ascends out of frame. The shoes of tabbing flash onto Hope's feet. The lights go out again. All page tabs are visible.
Bingo Bakery, homepage, 18 links.
Okay, I've got 18 links. I wonder how many I'll have to jump through to get where I need to go.
Hope jumps to a link.
Services.
Nope, that's not what I'm looking for. I need a ready-made cake.
A timer counts down.
Catering. Locations. Contact. Style. List with 3 options.
Hope climbs down the list.
Square. Pan sheet. Flavor. List with 3 options. Chocolate. White. Spice.
This seems like a build-your-own-cake section. I don't have time for that. I just want a pre-made cake.
Frosting. List with 3 options.
Time is up. The bakery is closed. Hope loses a life. She has 2 left. Image of a closed sign. Bing appears.
Goodness, this is harder than it should be. Let me see if the developers can help again.
A pop-up menu appears. The difficulty level changes from challenging to inefficient. Hope spawns again at the top of the page. Bing descends.
Still having trouble? Here, try this developer bonus.
A pop-up menu with an image of a technical device and the code for landmarks.
This landmark teleportation device will allow you to teleport to landmarks on the page. Good luck, and make haste.
Bing ascends out of frame. The teleportation device flashes onto Hope's wrist. The lights go out. All page tabs and landmarks are visible.
Bingo Bakery, homepage, 18 links, 4 landmarks.
Okay, let's see what's on this page.
Hope teleports.
Navigation landmark. List with 6 items. Bingo. Homepage button.
Okay, that's where I am now. What's next?
Main landmark. List with 11 items. Styling.
Well, that was a nice jump.
Hope jumps.
Flavor. List with 3 options. Frosting. List with 3 options. More. Birthday. List with 2 options.
Is this a pre-made cake section?
Hope climbs.
Image of a round cake with happy birthday written on top. Flavor. White. Frosting. Vanilla. Decoration. Red.
Yes, this is it.
Time is up. The bakery is booked full. Hopeless is alive. She has 1 left. Image of a booked order form. Bing appears.
Getting closer. Let me see if the developers have anything else up their sleeves.
A pop-up menu. The difficulty level changes from inefficient to effortless. Hope spawns again at the top of the page. Bing descends.
You almost made it that time. Here's one more developer gift that can help you out.
A pop-up menu with an image of a gun and the code for headings.
This grappling gun of headings will allow you to swing 2 headings on the page. Good luck, and make haste.
Bing ascends out of frame. The gun flashes into Hope's hand. The lights go out. All page tabs, landmarks, and headings are visible.
Bingo Bakery. Homepage. 18 links. 4 landmarks. 3 headings.
All right, this is my last chance. I have to make it this time.
Hope teleports.
Navigation landmark. List with 6 items. Bingo. Homepage button. Main landmark. List with 14 items. Build your own heading.
Okay, what's the next heading?
Hope shoots and grapples to the next heading.
Pre-made cakes.
Yes, here we are.
Hope jumps.
Birthday. List with 2 options.
Hope climbs.
Image of a round cake with happy birthday written on top.
That's the one.
Checkout. Time. List with 2 options. Now.
Yes.
Billing. List with 3 options. Cash on delivery.
Yes, please.
Hope jumps to finish button with 1 second remaining. Image of bakery interior as baker hands Hope a cake. Hope is jubilant. Bing appears.
Congratulations, you've ordered your cake in the nick of time.
Hope is back in her house.
Gee, having those extra accessibility options sure made that faster and more enjoyable. I never would have got this cake in time for the party without them.
Text of accessibility coding.
Accessibility navigation is a piece of cake.
Text displays. The cake is not a lie. Pixelated Microsoft logo.
So again, it's a little bit cheesy, but at the same time, I kind of really like it because it's not this sterile video that, here's an explanation of web accessibility. I think what's really neat about that is, we've been talking about headings a lot in the Microsoft session and then in the PDF session. And really, you see that inclusion of headings just made everything go that much faster for that user. So I'm going to flip back to my PowerPoint presentation and we'll continue on from there. Okay. So before we get started talking about the actual content accessibility guidelines, which really is kind of like a textbook, I'd like to stress with anybody on the team now, these content accessibility guidelines are for people that are more maybe tech savvy, the developers, the programmers, but it is good for everybody to have somewhat of a knowledge of all of these things. And to start out with this accessibility fundamentals is something that Microsoft has in their Microsoft Learn platform. And I love it because it's a entryway or just like introduction for pretty much anybody to get basic accessibility guidelines, and it's through Microsoft. They had this at their Ability Summit, which is a huge national conference or an international conference held by Microsoft every year. And with COVID, they've taken all of this virtually. So I was never able to attend in person, but luckily because of COVID, I was able to attend this Ability Summit. And what was great is they offered this training and it's still being offered. I think there's a accessibility badge with LinkedIn that you can get. I'm not sure if I ever did get my badge for this, but let me pull up that actual website. So in accessibility fundamentals, there's a couple of things that Microsoft does. It parses it out into modules. It gives you some experience points over to the side to help people kind of gamify it a little bit. But it splices up 4 major areas of accessibility: introduction to disability and accessibility, Microsoft's features and tools, which are excellent. I think most people should look at these accessibility features built into Microsoft, because some help, like very specific disabilities, but there's one called Immersive Reader. And if we have time today, I'd love to show that to you, but that could help someone with maybe a cognitive disability, or really just someone who has trouble reading. And so say if they came into a career center and they do have trouble interpreting an application or reading something, this is a feature built into Microsoft's web browser that is just excellent. Creating accessible content with Microsoft 365. If you attended the Office session, that is the long and short of that. And digital accessibility, very much what we're talking about today. So I'm just going to click on one of these and I'll take digital accessibility. And so it gives you objectives that you want to learn, or that the module's hoping to teach you. And it gives you prerequisites, but talks about digital accessibility, app development, and then a summary. And pretty much all of these work the same way. And what I like is it's just a self-paced module that you can go through. You read a couple of things like headings and landmarks, page structure. That's kind of what we talked about today. The color, and it mentions down here that color analyzer from Accessibility Insights, which we're going to talk a lot more about today. But some of the stuff is just, it may seem like it's difficult knowledge, but Microsoft really makes it, bites it out into chunks. And so it's not that hard to understand kind of what they're doing. But I think it's a great resource if you're looking to, if you've got new employees starting that don't understand accessibility, it's a great place to start. All right. So we're going to switch back to our PowerPoint. So what is WCAG? And it refers to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And so these are international accessibility guidelines. They've got a consortium that comes together from all parts of the world, that basically it's a group of people that say, this is what makes a website accessible. This is what makes a website inaccessible. I gave this story during the last time we presented this, and I think it's kind of interesting, though, to see the perspective of somebody that made this. So I was giving a presentation at Princeton University, and there was a guy there who was absolutely brilliant. He was a blind guy who was a programmer, and his name was Jason White. And he was one of the people that helped write these guidelines and plot it out. And he gave this long kind of speech about web accessibility. And I was like, okay, this guy's pretty cool. And I went to talk to him. And I realized a couple of things, and I'm not knocking the guy, but when I came up, I said, hey, I'm Jason Martin. It's good to meet you. Here's something I've been looking for that I haven't been able to find. And I said, how can we take these standards that are kind of difficult for a person that's not a programmer to understand, and do you have like a web content accessibility for everyday mortals, for just regular people? And he looked back at me and he said, well, honestly, it's not that hard to understand. They're written in plain English. And I thought that was it was kind of telling that, some people, and I've worked with developers and programmers on these guidelines, and they're not written in plain English, I would say. Like, they're a little difficult to interpret, especially if you're not familiar with them. If you are a programmer, you can kind of understand where they're going, but it's a little bit tough. And so since I spoke to him The Web Consortium has actually put out a lot more information, kind of what I was requesting. You know, for your average person who knows nothing about this stuff, where is their information? So there's a couple of links here that I'm going to pull up, that I have pulled up. But it's kind of how people use the web, an introduction to WCAG guidelines. Let's pull this up. And again, I do apologize for bouncing back and forth. It's just the nature of Zoom. I wish I could just share my entire screen with you so you could we could move around a little easier. But let me click and bring this up. So here we go. Okay. So this introduction to web accessibility is somewhat similar to what you've seen through Microsoft and some of the things that we've talked about today. But if you have a programmer or have a developer that is curious about this, it's a great place to start. It's got accessibility and context. What is web accessibility? I mean, they break it down fairly easily. There is a video, I'm going to wait a second to kind of go into this, but it is the video introduction to web accessibility and these standards. So it kind of covers what they're talking about. Let's go ahead. I do believe I've got that pulled up. Yes.
Accessibility Insights for Web.
Hi, my name is Shadi Abu Zahra. I'm the Accessibility Strategy and Technology Specialist at W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium. And today, I'd like to tell you about web accessibility. The web is for many people an essential part of daily life, at work, at home, and on the road. Web accessibility means that people with disabilities can use the web equally. For example, somebody who cannot use their arms and uses a mouse stick to type, or someone who cannot hear well and uses captions to watch videos, or someone who cannot see well and uses a screen reader to read aloud what's on the screen. Accessibility has many benefits. For example, captions benefit anyone in a loud or in a quiet environment, and good color contrast works better when there is glare. Also, people with age-related impairments, such as reduced dexterity, benefit. In fact, everyone has a better user experience with an improved layout and design. A lot of accessibility can be built into the underlying code of websites and applications. Web technologies from W3C, such as HTML, provide support for many accessibility features. For example, features to provide text alternatives for images, which are read aloud by screen readers and also used by search engines. Also, headings, labels, and other code supports accessibility and improves the quality overall. Good authoring tools, such as wikis, content management systems, and code editors, help create accessible code, either automatically or with input from the author. Also, web browsers, media players, and apps need to support accessibility features. W3C provides standards to help make the web accessible, which are internationally recognized by governments and businesses. Most well-known is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG. WCAG is also ISO standard 40500 and adopted in the European standard called EN 301549. It is built around 4 core principles. First, perceivable. For example, so people can see the content or hear it. Operable, for example, so people can use the computer by typing or by voice. Understandable, for example, so people get clear and simple language. And robust, so people can use different assistive technologies. Besides WCAG, W3C also provides the authoring tool Accessibility Guidelines, ATAG, which defines requirements for content management systems, code editors, and other software. And the User Agent Accessibility Guidelines, UAAG, defines requirements for web browsers and media players. There are over 1 billion people with disabilities, or around 15 to 20% of the population. The UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities defines access to information, including the web, as a human right. Most countries around the world have ratified this UN Convention, and several have adopted binding policies too. Yet, regardless of any laws and regulations, implementing the accessibility standards is essential for people with disabilities and useful for all. For more information on web accessibility, visit w3.org/WAI.
Jason, are you, is your microphone muted?
Oh, it is. It is. Thank you, Anna.
Sorry about that.
No,
Yeah.
that's keep me straight.
All right.
So what I was saying is these are the web content accessibility guidelines, and they're about as much fun as reading the manual for a microwave. I've got to be honest, especially if you're not a developer or not an accessibility developer with that in mind. And I mentioned that Jason White said, oh, well, it's really not that hard. And as I was glancing here at the bottom with my microphone muted, Jason White's name's actually right here at the bottom of these standards. So I thought that was pretty interesting to see his name pop up here. So what that video did was kind of outline 4 major areas that developers look at for accessibility standards. As we go through these, now I'm not going to go through them in with a fine tooth comb or in fine detail, because I have a tool that, again, if you get nothing from me today, the tool that I'm going to show you, if you talk to one of your developers, if you're connected to anyone working on the website or anyone that's working on anything that's public facing like that, the tool I'm going to show you is imperative to know, and it makes sense of all of these standards. So it has this big table of contents, and it goes over the layers of guidance. So accessibility on the web works in a couple of different ways. There are A standards, which is like the bare minimum you need to be doing. There are AA standards, which is what is considered acceptable under the ADA. And then there's AAA standards. And so that's kind of going above and beyond. An example of that would be, while a deaf person may need closed captioning, that is a AA standard that's required under ADA. To provide an ASL interpreter is going to AAA standards. It's not necessarily required, but it is a great accessibility feature. If we're doing something live like this, live audio description, that is a AAA standard. But if you've got recorded video, recorded audio description is required under the ADA. So, you know, with a lot of these videos, with the TED Talk in the beginning, and then what he just said, there are international laws regarding accessibility. However, in the United States, it's still kind of up in the air. Lower courts have made decisions on the accessibility of websites. They have sided with individuals with disabilities. They consider the web to be a public space. If you and I can go to it, a person with a disability should be able to as well. That is not verbatim law of the land, but the lower courts have generally sided with individuals with disabilities when it comes to this issue. I asked this question the last time during the session, and that was, can anyone tell me the major company that made it to the Supreme Court over accessibility? And nobody could, and that's okay. But the company was Domino's Pizza. So you had this court case where a blind individual was trying to order a delicious Domino's pizza online, and he got to the website, he got his pizza, but he couldn't check out. And so he called his local Domino's and said, hey, I want to order this online pizza, and it's like 25% off online. Well, where the lawsuit came about is he couldn't get it online, the website was inaccessible, and when he called in, the company, stupidly in my opinion, would not give him the 25% discount or whatever it was on the pizza because it was online only. So it was a lawsuit that went all the way to the Supreme Court, where I believe the gentleman won in the lower courts. It was appealed a number of times, and he did win in the lower courts, and then Domino's kept appealing it, and it went to the Supreme Court, and they decided not to hear that case. So there has been nothing definitively decided by the Supreme Court, but we all work under the assumption that web accessibility falls underneath the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. So that is still kind of current, and I'm still following it. I'll be curious when the Supreme Court does finally take on one of these cases, because the lawsuits are happening all the time, to be honest. So you see, I guess when we talk about this, and especially when I give demonstrations of the websites and what it means to be inaccessible and what it means to be accessible, I've got to get this out first and foremost. As our agency, what we're here to do is to educate and make people aware. Graham Sisson with the Governor's Office of Disability, he and I have had several conversations on web accessibility, and Graham feels the same way I do in this sense that we are not here to threaten people with a lawsuit. We're not here to scare you. We're here to make you aware and give you the tools to effectively change it and avoid these possibilities, these negative press events that I mentioned earlier. But you do have a sect of individuals that are, for lack of better terms, they're ambulance chasers. It's kind of an old dated term, but what they do is they will look on the web and look for websites that are inaccessible and sue them procedurally. They will go through and file court cases regarding that. We've been aware of a group that has went to public school websites in a number of different states and would go through every public school website in the county or in the state by county and would procedurally sue them. Most of the times they're doing this out of court, but it puts a bad image on the idea of web accessibility that, oh, if you don't do this, we'll sue you, not do this because it's the right thing to do. So that's just kind of a disclaimer when we talk about this stuff, that it is the right thing to do. And we're not saying that, you know, sometimes people with disabilities get a bad rap when they report something regarding accessibility. And the companies, and really not government agencies so much, but private companies feel threatened by that. And that is understandably so, but that's why you do have kind of accessibility evangelists out here like myself that want to promote the good practices and not in a threatening way, because it really doesn't help the cause that much. So you have a couple of standards here, and I'm just going to click through them. Text alternatives. We talked about this thoroughly in the Microsoft Office session and in the PDF session, that images need to have alternative text. They mentioned that. Time-based media, anything that's a video, or literally if it's an audio recording, well, that's media that works on a time stream. It has its own standards that you need to be able to implement. That includes captioning, audio description. I mentioned the sign language that's pre-recorded, or the extended audio description. Create content that can be presented in different ways. So with a simpler layout without losing information. That's a more abstract concept to kind of get, but it helps individuals with cognitive disabilities. Distinguishable, make it easier for users to see and hear content, including separation of the foreground and background. So that color contrast that we talked about today, the use of color, color is not only used as a visual means of conveying information. If you remember the example of, if you are late and do not call, you will be fired. And some of those words were in color. And if you're only using a screen reader, you don't understand the meaning of that statement. Audio controls as well. And again, I'm skimming through these because I want to get to how you can take this and change it. But I do like showing the standards to go, oh, it's just simple. And I don't agree with that statement. And when you look at these, it kind of makes sense why. Keyboard access. This is something that's been stressed in a lot of the videos that we've seen already today, but you want users to be able to navigate through the entire website using a keyboard. And I've got some great examples of websites that do it really well and websites that don't. Provide enough time for users to read and write and use content. This happens a lot, and it was one of the standards mentioned with Word, but if you've ever been working on a website, logging in information, and you might step away, go get a sandwich, or talk to a coworker and come back, and then the website reloads and everything that you've done has been deleted. That can not only be annoying for general users, but that can be really, really troublesome for individuals using assistive technology. The ability to pause, stop, and hide. You've got some websites that have these, they look cool, but they have like auto scrolling functions, or if say, and not to bring up the election, but say when election results are coming in, you've got websites that will constantly keep loading information, and you need a way to stop that, because for someone with a screen reader or using assistive technology, if they're halfway down the page and then live update from Washington, D.C. comes in, it's going to refresh the page and put them in a wholly different space. Seizures now, we mentioned this in detail, and the lady in the TED Talk mentioned this as well, that flashing lights, flashing images are just really, it's a best practice to avoid that. In the 90s, it was cool, I guess, but I think a lot of places have really shied away from this. But flashing lights could cause people to have an epileptic seizure, and you definitely don't want that associated with your agency or your brand. Random note, there was an episode of Pokemon that is infamous in Japan because it had flashing lights and children were having epileptic seizures, something definitely the creators of Pokemon did not want. Find a way to help new users navigate. So, if you've got blocks in the page, and we'll talk about that a little later, but links, purpose, and context, not just the click here, but a full link description, headings and labels. That was what our bakery video was about, skipping through and being able to navigate a page efficiently. Understandable. So the human language of the page is put in the programming. Now, this is basic, and a programmer honestly would understand that. Unusual words, if you've got this strange word built into your website, it is best practice to figure out a different word that can be used for that. And Anna and her team had a great example of that. I can't remember, it was too many cooks in the kitchen spoils the broth, and then you have a different way of saying that that's just utterly confusing. So this is kind of reinforcing that. Predictable, make web pages appear in operable and predictable ways. Really, that's a design decision. So you want someone, when they're making a website, for it to look the same in all parts of the website. You don't want it to look like, for instance, Facebook on one click and then eBay on another click. The whole layout changes. It confuses people. That's something that you definitely want to keep standard. Input assistant, help users avoid and correct mistakes. Sometimes if you're typing in a website and you put your birthday in wrong, the IRS is known for this. So if you put your birthday in wrong, say your birthday is January 1st, 1999. Well, you put 01/01/1999 and it gives you an error message. You want that error message to say, oh, you need forward slashes in that. You don't need it to say error message 675892. You want a reason for the error messages. So again, some of these things Jason White isn't wrong about. If you're a programmer, these should be instilled in you to be a best design practice, but possibly not everything. So robust, meaning robust content must be robust enough that it can be interpreted reliably by a wide variety of user agents. So that really means that you shouldn't have a website that you can only view on Internet Explorer 1999 edition, or it can only read write in Chrome, but not Internet Explorer, or it can rewrite in Firefox, but not Chrome. You want to make sure that your website can be viewable, or it has to be viewed on a computer. You want to make sure that you can view it on a phone as well. So different people use different technologies to access things, and you want to make sure that those websites are being covered in all places. And I've got a very great example of some of these sites not working so much. So that's the standards in a nutshell. I mean, like again, it feels like you're reading a manual for a microwave. It's not the easiest thing to digest. And let me go back real quick to my PowerPoint. Okay. So there's a video for accessibility insights, and we talked about that with the color contraster, but I want to show you the video, and then I want to show you accessibility insights in action. Again, if you get nothing out of this session, get the words accessibility insights from Microsoft, because if you're talking to someone or if you hear a complaint about the website, let your developers know of this tool and it makes sense of that microwave manual. Let me go ahead and show you this video.
Web is a Chrome extension that helps developers find and fix accessibility issues in websites and web applications. Accessibility Insights for Web supports two primary workflows, FastPass and Assessment. The FastPass workflow helps developers identify common, high-impact accessibility issues in less than 5 minutes. We recommend running a FastPass prior to each code check-in. FastPass begins with automated checks. Within seconds, Accessibility Insights checks for compliance with dozens of accessibility requirements. Failures are highlighted directly in the target page. Clicking a failure icon brings up details about the failure, including how to fix it. Another click brings you to the DOM. You can implement a fix, then easily verify it by rerunning the automated checks. If the problem can't be fixed immediately, you can copy the failure details and paste them into a bug, or generate a detailed report of all failures detected. The second part of FastPass is an assisted manual test for tab stops. Keyboard navigation is one of the most important aspects of accessibility. Keyboard users can't use an app or site unless they can navigate it. Accessibility Insights explains why it matters and what problems to look for. It also provides clear do and don't guidelines to help you avoid accessibility problems in the future. And a visual helper makes it easy to identify such problems as missing tab stops or incorrect tab order. The second workflow is assessment. The assessment workflow helps anyone with HTML skills conduct a thorough accessibility evaluation. An assessment provides 100% WCAG 2.0 AA coverage through a combination of automated checks and approximately 20 manual tests. Most of the manual tests are assisted, meaning that Accessibility Insights either identifies the test instances or makes it easier to spot failures. Accessibility Insights for Web provides rich guidance for assessments. Each test has do and don't guidelines, and each requirement has step-by-step test instructions. You can drill in for further details, including why it matters, how to fix, examples, and links to the relevant WCAG success criteria, techniques, and common failures.
For more information, go to accessibilityinsights.io. The link is also available in the video description. On behalf of Accessibility Insights, thank you for watching.
So what Microsoft has done is they've developed this tool that makes sense of all of these guidelines, and it makes it a whole lot easier for people like me and other accessibility advocates to take a look at a site and help explain to developers what's going on. Every development team that has a public website should know about this. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Stephanie, I think Jason too does have access to share my screen. I'm going to try it and we'll see. So I'm going to keep my microphone on, but kind of go through some of this stuff. Yes. Okay. We can see it. So Accessibility Insights is, you can just go straight to their website with Microsoft. But what it does is it installs a Google Chrome extension, and you have to have permission, in your agency to be able to use this. That's one of the reasons why I'm on a completely separate computer. It's been blocked on my personal computer, but it is one of the most useful tools of looking at a website. And I want to start with this web page for Disability In. It's a great organization that Anna Taylor can tell you all about. She loves her some Disability In. But if I go to Accessibility Insights for Web and click on this, I get a couple of options here. FastPass, assessment, and ad hoc heals. So ad hoc tools. FastPass is the way I take a look at a website and immediately can tell you it's doing okay, or it's got some issues. And so when I click on FastPass, it's going to pop up a different web browser or a different, another page essentially. And I'm going to show you that page. So I'm going to click on it and share this page. Okay. So this was Disability In's website, and it had, and they are like the premier place for promoting advocacy about disabilities. And they have about 3 errors on the page. Now, these could be an update that happened. If I wanted to see more information about that, I could. If I'm a developer, this is going to all make more sense. But it will give me a couple of clues. 3 errors, though, is really not bad. And that just because the automated test is finding it doesn't mean that they're really crucial errors. Disability In is a great example for a website. The way tab page, know how a keyboard accesses the page, I can, but I'd like not to use Disability In as an example. I'd like to go to our ADRS webpage. So I'm going to close out this window, and I'm going to go back to our page, and I want to go through our ADRS page and give you an example of, we've worked with, should I say, I've worked with developers very extensively over about a year or 2 now to make sure that our website is accessible for individuals with disabilities. So if I wanted to do a fast pass on this, I would click and it pops up with, we have 4 errors on our page. Which I don't feel like that's that terrible. There's a couple of things that our developers need to fix, but I have tab stops that I can turn on. And so when I press the tab key, you can see there's a little circle that starts up at the top, and it shows me how a user using a keyboard is going to navigate through our site. And it does something that we've talked about at length in today's presentation, and that it goes in a logical reading order. It reads the way you and I would read. If I keep navigating through it, It's going to then go to our YouTube page, skip around. Everything on this is a great example of how things should be read. And we had to work at length to make sure that this site read this way, but it does work. And I'll give you an example of a page in a second that does not work this way. So this, I mean, I feel so good to be able to show my agency's website and be able to go, we're running a great example of what web accessibility should be. And even with our 4 errors, I feel like a person could still get on this page and with relative ease navigate through it. If I wanted to do a full check, and so I'm going to go to my Accessibility Insights Chrome extension again, and I'm going to do a full assessment. So I'm going to open up the next page to give you an idea of what it looks like with the complete assessment going through it. So on the left-hand pane over here, there's all of these things that were covered in the WCAG guidelines, that microwave manual, if you will, and it breaks them down into really easily understandable things that a developer could check. So a keyboard, does it have keyboard navigation? I can turn on a visual helper and it will show me, like it did with the tab stops, how a page operates. And this is just like an easy wizard that somebody can pick up. It's a how-to guide, should I say. Wizard's an old term, but a how-to guide of looking through websites bit by bit by bit. And then when you're done, it gives a great report to developers and to people that it gives them great information to make the changes that need to make it accessible. Now, what I'd like to do is show you an example of a terrible website. I am a member of the Special Education Advisory Panel for Alabama, and I have advocated strongly for accessibility of the Alabama Department of Special Education's website. So they know me. I'm not sure if they like me that much, but that's okay. As a teacher of the visually impaired, I'm fairly frequently going to the ASLDE website, and it's a horrible example of accessibility. Supposedly they are in the works of changing this website, but I've been told that same thing for about 1.5 years now, and we still aren't there. But if I ran a FastPass on this website, where Disability In got about 40 or 3 errors, Rehab Site got 4 errors. If I run a FastPass on this website, I will share. This website comes up with about 38 different errors automatically. That is the quick look at it. That's not the in-depth. If I go to tab stops, now, if you remember on the ADRS website, it went logical reading order. It went all the way down the way it should. If we take a look at the State Department of Education website, I'm going to hit tab on it. It starts up at the corner. And then that's all it does. So it goes to the Great Seal of Alabama. It goes to the heading of the website, and then it goes to application pages. So essentially, this website, you cannot navigate through keyboard navigation. The tab stops aren't there. And if you're noticing, like, it's changing backgrounds, that's a problem written in the content accessibility guidelines. It's a significant issue because there are teachers with visual impairments, there are parents with disabilities that access the site, and hopefully, kind of speaking up about them, it will get changed. Now, we did not do this website for our last training, but I was curious. in the comments, is anybody familiar with this madeinalabama.com? I'm not sure if you are or not. I would imagine that you would be. And again, we're not here to chastise or to, you know, blame anyone for their website. We're here to just say, look, are you aware of this? So if I ran a fast pass on this madeinalabama.com, it takes me a second to navigate Zoom around, but it comes up with about 57 errors. That's not to say that it is try the aidt.edu website and speak on the accessibility widget, but there. Okay, that's a good one, Stephanie. I will. There's about 57 different issues that pop up, and I can tell you the majority of them deal with color contrast on this website. So if we go back and just take a look, tab stops is something interesting too, just to take a look at this website. But now that I've mentioned to you guys color contrast, it kind of makes sense when you're looking at this page. That's a very bright red and it's white. Some people might not see that well. If I use the tab stops on the page, it does generally work in the right reading order. Now, if I go back up to the top though, it does not allow me, if I'm using a keyboard, to go to the menu option. So it's just something to keep in mind, and it's something to improve. This is not the worst website by far. I think Department of Special Ed still wins that, or Alabama State Department of Education wins that award in my book. But this website, at least I can navigate through it. I can read it. I think the images are not described. They don't have alt text behind them. But that's something that could definitely be improved and very easily. So the last request that I'll go through with this tool is aidt.edu. Let's take a look at AIDT. It looks great, but I'm not sure if it looks great in terms of accessibility. So I'm going to run a fast pass through the site. Maybe it does. I don't know. Not bad, actually. That's kind of cool to say. And again, this is just looking at, and I will go and share the results of it with you. Only about 9 errors. So that's not the worst thing in the world that we've seen. There is some color contrast issues. There are some text pictures that don't have alt text, and there's some links that aren't named properly. That's what I'm seeing on an automatic check. If I go through and just take a look, and now this isn't that 23 line looking at everything in the website. We did do that with our ADRS page, but this is just a quick look so I can go, how's this rocking? Not bad. As I'm going through, the question I got was, what about this widget here at the bottom? And let me come back actually to this page. I got a question about what about this widget at the bottom, and it's a little accessibility guide widget, and that's been a common question, and I see it advertised a lot. Those are really not useful whatsoever. They mean relatively nothing in the world of accessibility. They look nice. Let me take off the tab stops so we can look at the image that I'm showing you. It's this guy down here in the bottom that says hide. That's about the universal symbol for accessibility. It looks great. There are functions built into it. You can, if I click on him, I'm sure that I can magnify my text and control color contrast. The problem with these things is that they don't ensure website accessibility. If somebody needs assistive technology to access the page, generally they're going to already be using it. If I need magnification, I don't need a button on the website to put bigger text. A lot of times these companies will sell an add-on or plug-in and state that it conforms to accessibility guidelines and companies think they're okay, when in reality, they're not. That's just about the best way of saying it with these buttons. It's better to have a good standardized programming team that really gets these standards than to have a button like this, because you're basically paying for, it's paying to feel good, is my honest opinion of it. So with that, Accessibility Insights is the tool for your programmers. I think it's a great thing to have, and I'm going to switch back control to my other laptop. Before I do that, I wanted to go through just quickly about captions and accessibility. So just the way to, some creative ways that you can do audio description. And I have this on my own computer. We're still seeing my screen. Let me navigate to the right place. So what I'm showing right now on my screen is, this is a simple video editor. There are many like it. This one is mine. But this is a way that a lot of times I hear companies, when they put videos on their public website, they have captions. 9 times out of 10 they do, but they don't have audio description. So it's fairly simple to do this if you have someone with a decent voice and access to a video editing software. It's fairly easy to put audio description into these videos. A lot of the videos that you've seen today have had audio description, not all of them, but this one, for example, and I'm going to see if I can share it. I know it was a little goofy the last time. I'm going to mute. So I'm attempting not to get audio feedback loop. That's basically the video without audio description. It's got a lot of information up there. Visually, we can tell what it is, but this is how we did it for a conference recently. And it was just fairly simple. The main video is up top here with the logo and the text beneath it. But then the bottom video is, or the bottom section here, right down here is the audio. So I'm going to mute myself, turn up my volume so we don't get that feedback loop.
Look at the team that made this conference possible at altechsymposium.net/team. Check out our vendor exhibition at altechsymposium.net/vendors and click on the Zoom link to join them live.
So that's a fairly low budget way to do audio captions. Like, it is just literally having someone come in underneath the pre-made video and read it. I've got a couple of examples left as I end this session. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and come in, and it's a few happy notes that I like to end this presentation with. Let me come and click the links right now. Anna, are there any questions or anything else that I might need to address as we go basically towards the last 2 things of the session?
I don't have any questions in the chat at this point.
All right, thanks, Stephanie.
Confluence, team collaborations.
So I'm going to ask you all definitely to give me some input about this next video. That we've talked about some of these big tech companies making great strides, but I want, if you would, as you're watching it in the chat, to tell me what the problem with this video is, because there's definitely a problem there. It's a video for screen readers for blind individuals to use a Chromebook. And I just am curious if you can spot the issue that is rocking along with this video. So let me share the screen very quickly. And then we've got that and one final video, and then we are done for the day. So again, this is for a screen reader. Chime in the comments, please. So I see that one person put it flips between the screens very quickly. Yes, it does. It does do that. There's one other like big glaring error that I just want to see if anybody caught in this. Like, and I hate we're not live because it's so much easier to talk to you back and forth. And when I say this, I love getting the aha moment from the audience. But in the video, where is it at? It does not demonstrate the screen reader. It does. It has a blind person using the screen reader, right? But what does it not have that we've talked about? Like audio description. That's absolutely right. Like, so it's an example of one of these awesome companies doing something for blind and visually impaired, but they're missing the mark. The whole video, this advertisement would go out on national media. I'm certain of it. And they do have an audio described version of it, but that described version would not be in the commercial. So if a blind person were to see this on a TV, they would just get nice violin. They would not understand what's going on because they're missing out on that audio description. Again, I understand that, you know, I see captions everywhere, but if there's one thing that really sticks to me, again, my father's blind. I was a young kid describing commercials and describing movies for him myself. And it's one thing that really sticks with me is that audio description is not seen as imperative as captioning. And that's not to say one disability is more than the other. It's just they both need to be present. Disney and Netflix have done an excellent job of including captioning. And so I'd like to leave you in this session with this last bit of it
From
done
the
right.
creators of Tangled and Wreck-It Ralph, Disney. A carrot-nosed coal-eyed snowman shuffles up to a purple flower peeping out of deep snow.
Ooh, hello.
He takes a deep sniff. His nose lands on a frozen pond. A reindeer looks up and pants like a dog. Seeing the reindeer slip on the ice, the snowman smiles and moves towards him, though actually he's running on the spot. The reindeer falls on his chin. The snowman uses his arm as a crutch. The reindeer paddles his front legs. Head over heels, the snowman crawls along the ice. The reindeer does the breaststroke. The snowman rolls his body, but flips onto his back. The reindeer's tongue sticks to the ice. The snowman held his head. Twig arm and reindeer lips tug at the carrot. The carrot flies off and lands in soft snow. The reindeer goes after it with snowman and his body parts hanging on his tail. The snowman puts himself back together again and glumly contemplates his noseless state. The reindeer jams the carrot back in place and pants like a proud puppy. The snowman pats him with his stick-thin arm, then goes to sneeze. He grabs his nose with both hands. His head shoots off. Frozen, coming this winter, in 3D.
I absolutely adore that video because it shows that audio description, you know, it can be creative. It can be absolutely appropriate. And having worked at a school for blind and visually impaired children, we had one video that we showed one time where a teacher was crossing off skydiving from his bucket list. And they blissfully did an assembly where they showed the video and it wasn't audio described. Well, I took it back. I took the video, audio described it myself. And it was just really cool to see the population of blind children. You would see the guy look on the outside of the plane. He would get ready to jump out. And then you would hear Tim looks over the skyline of 50,000 feet in the air. And then half of the audience would gasp when they saw it. The other half would gasp when they heard it. So it is just an example of being inclusive. And if we can make Disney's Frozen inclusive, I think we can make our HR videos and our public website videos inclusive. With that, that's WCAG in a nutshell. And thank you guys for having me today.
Wow. Are you finished, Jason? We want some more.
You can't handle more, I don't think. I think most are like, all right, I'm ready to be done here.
we got so much great information from you today. I know I loved all of those videos. Give Jason the heart emoji, y'all. Give him some shout out. This is such great training. I'm just so excited about it. I appreciate all your feedback and questions and stuff like that throughout. But does anyone have any final questions for us today? Thank you, y'all. Appreciate those. Appreciate that love in the chat there. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, well, we got finished a little early today, so I'm excited to go ahead and wrap things up for our final training for you guys. My name is Anna Taylor, and of course, you know Jason Martin. We will be sending out some links to our recordings today so that you guys can go back and go watch what Jason was teaching over and over again to get some of those hard concepts down. And certainly, we appreciate you doing everything you can to make things accessible and inclusive. So thanks for joining us today. Thank you again, Matt Morris and Lillian, for having us come on and train all of you wonderful people today. So we appreciate it. And remember, we're trying to advance inclusion in Alabama, and it starts with all of us trying to just make a little bit different, a little difference, a little bit at a time, and eating one bite of an elephant, eating an elephant one bite at a time, y'all. So thank you very much. Have a good day.